Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, maybe Rope Hat HQ, because all three of us on this very call wearing our rope hats here, repping different things, but we've got the producer of More Important Issues back in for Landon this week, Joe Niblick. Joe, good evening, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Just trying to get to Thursday. It's time to get to Fayetteville, baby.
You're going too, so it's the whole crew, man.
We're getting everybody on the ground.
And but are y'all driving or are y'all flying? How is this all going?
Caleb's flying. Landon's driving separate. I'm driving with some buddies, but we're getting there one way or another.
Y'all are built different. Also here, Caleb Mitchell of More Important Issues. Caleb, I think you have the right idea. A flight to Fayetteville feels better. The road trip, because it's not going there. That's what I've always felt like. When you travel, it's like going there is the fun part. It's right. Like, I can do it. It's the coming back. You're like, oh, that Sunday morning's going to hit a little bit different, Joe.
Oh, it's going to – see, but we got fall break at UT.
Oh, so there you go.
So we can take our time a little bit. We might take a
How is it already fall break?
Do what?
Didn't school just start back like a month ago?
Not complaining.
There you go. The fall break a month in. I miss fall break. They should have fall break for adults, Caleb, is something I think.
I actually, yes, along the same lines. I'm not sure. I can't remember how many there are federal holidays, bank holidays, people in the, I've found out real adults call them. If I ever run for any kind of political office, even if it's something as small as county commissioner, my number one priority will be instituting a federal holiday every month. Just one. But I think that gives everybody something to look forward to. You get that Monday, and they're all Mondays, Fridays. This Thanksgiving Thursday, don't like it. Most people get Friday off. That's great, but I'm doing this for everybody in the world. July 4th, listen, we can always celebrate Independence Day on July 4th. I'm an American. I'm not changing that. But the bank holiday will be viewed on either Monday or Friday of that week. I think we're giving these 3-day weekends.
I love that. I would chop off half of December, maybe the first 2 weeks of January too. Nothing's happening. No one's doing anything. Right. No one's reconnecting. No one's circling back on that project. No one's jumping on a call. No one's doing any of that. We're all pretending. That is someone who's done both worlds. There's nothing going on. We don't need to be there. That is one of the weirder times because everyone's out in and out for holidays, vacations, this, that, and the other. Nobody's doing anything. We're coming down from Christmas. We're getting excited for Christmas. No, you don't need anything from mid-December on to early to mid-January. We can just go ahead and cancel that out of the work schedule every year. That's something I would add to the platform, Caleb. I don't know if you were taking suggestions, but I would add that.
No, listen, I'm a man of the people. I only take suggestions, actually. I'm very easy to sway. I'm not someone set in stone in my beliefs as most people make me out to be. So you can talk me into anything. And a lot of people think you got to pay politicians. Not this politician. You just say it and I'm probably like, yeah, that sounds good to me. Sure. Let's run it.
Go. How did the golf tournament go this weekend? Everything good?
We got a lot of great feedback. I had a great time, as stressful as a lot of the days leading up to it and that morning were. But I thought everyone had a good time, which I guess that my having a good time was really predicated on that when you do an event like that. But I enjoyed it. We got so lucky with the weather. Just we got really blessed. I know I hate that we're kind of celebrating that in the midst of everything going on. Heartbreaking what's happening around us, but we did get lucky there. And the event was wonderful. Great turnout. Just a lot of good stuff that happened Saturday. So we'll see going forward what that looks like. But yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for checking in on that one.
I love it. Well, there is an actual football game happening this weekend, and Arkansas is ready for it. They're doing a stripe out is what they're calling it, I think. It seems a little bit more complicated to do a stripe out than a checkerboard, right? It feels a little bit more complicated to get people in that line way far. I don't know. The stripe out feels a little bit more complicated.
Did I see the correct graphic? It looks more like a checkerboard than a stripe.
That's what I thought, but it is a stripe out, right?
To a second deck, and then it looks.
That's where it gets confusing.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
You might as well do checkerboard if you're
I don't know.
It doesn't feel right. Arkansas, I think, is a tougher place to play. I think it's kind of underrated. I think Fayetteville's a little underrated for a road venue. but it's also like South Carolina doesn't need to do that. They have it's loud. It's just have something going on. Have
They
a
do
song.
play Sandstorm a lot.
Yeah, just do something like that. You don't need to try and jump in the Tennessee game with a checkerboard or anything. Like you don't need to do the whiteout like Happy
We
Valley.
did
Like,
steal that from Oklahoma. We stole the idea to do that. Well, I say that we checkerboarded Thompson Bowling Arena in like 06, maybe 07. So we actually did it before Oklahoma, but we got the idea to checker Neyland from playing Oklahoma the year prior.
Yeah.
And they striped their stadium, but they don't have as much upper deck space. It's not as complicated as Arkansas's.
Yeah, Arkansas just looks. I'm curious if it's a mess. Maybe not a mess like Tennessee, Indiana, and with the. What did that sign say? What did they actually end up spelling out? And
that's a lot of things though to spell out.
Yeah,
there are a lot of people to spell out. They use too many people. People
what
want to
was
talk to
it?
their
What did they
friends.
try to spell out? I don't even remember off the top of my head.
Good old Rocky Top, I think, is what it was.
And it wasn't close. If I recall.
No, they clearly they had gotten. Tennessee was down. It was a tough
Yeah.
time. They had decided, hey, I actually just want to talk to people. People had gotten up to get drinks, and then they came back to the wrong seat. It was very complicated. They struggled.
Yeah. Well, speaking
Chase,
of this,
real quick,
yeah.
Joey knows this from More Important Issues because my dog wreaks havoc on that show often.
Uh-huh.
I got home late, so I'm not going to run out of the camera because I hate your question or hate your next statement. I just got to let my dog in, or he will whine this entire show. So.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can move on. I'll jump back in. I just didn't want you to think I am being a little rude. It's my dog's fault, but I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
No, we're pro dog.
Occurrence.
We are pro dog on this very program. It's more than okay.
Great dog.
Exactly. Joe, we'll start with you here. Morris, we have like you weren't here last week, so we started a new theme here. These are going to be theme shows every week with the most important issues of the week for Tennessee. The first one I have for you, the most important player in the Arkansas game will be who for Tennessee?
God, it's got to be somebody. Let's go. I mean, I want to say Jakobe Thomas. I think someone on the defense is going to have to step up with their run game and hopefully be able to just that. But I also think Arion Carter is going to be a really big factor because he's kind of just been floating along, but he's already got 15 tackles through 4 games and has really been a key component of that defensive side. So I think those are 2 guys that are going to have to kind of step up to hopefully at least dampen that run game that Arkansas's got.
I like Arion Carter for sure, and Jakobe is just he's on the field. Like Jakobe Thomas, there's no missing Jakobe. He's a missile flying around, and he's great to have because he puts fear in a lot of opposing receivers. And Taylor Green, he runs a lot. You need to keep an eye on where number 9 is on defense because he very much might knock you out of the game if you don't have your head on a swivel. Because Jakobe, man, we didn't really know what we were going to get from him coming in from MTSU. He had pretty solid numbers over there in Murfreesboro, but I think right now, he's coming along, and I think people were over worried a little bit, Caleb, when it came to the Will Brooks versus Jakobe Thomas, whatever conversation. They're rotating so much, I just don't think it really matters. Like Idris Farouk's played a little bit, John Slaughter's played a little bit, Jacoby's solid. Obviously, the pick 6 and Will Brooks has been more than fine. I think it's actually been a blessing in disguise that like they don't have just go like last year with Wesley Walker and Tamarion McDonald and Jalen McCullough. They had veterans who just you knew were going to have to gobble up a bunch of snaps. Now I think it actually helps Tennessee in the long run that they have Banks especially has enough guys in the back end that he can trust. Some are young, some are older, but no one's just so far separate from the other one that there's much of a drop off. You notice much of a drop. They're different kind of players, but Banks is rotating. So it just speaks to the bigger, broader point through 4 weeks for Tennessee is that they've been able to rotate so much that these guys are all fresh. Like Arion's fresh because they've played a lot of linebackers, William Inchest through 4 weeks. Joe, you talked about it where he quietly has a pretty good amount of tackles. He's been solid next to Keenan Peely in that starting 2 deep, but it's not like he's had like the big kind of flashy plays yet, but part of it is because they're rotating. He's not playing 40 plus snaps a game and he's not really having to. And I wonder if this is the first game where they shrink the rotation a little bit more, like they did at receiver last week, or 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I think that's a good pull, and I think that back end is going to have to be making plays because Taylor Green's, I think, the most talented and versatile quarterback Tennessee's faced to this point, right?
Yeah, I would say what you said about Taylor Green is absolutely true. I still, we joked about it last night. I think how he plays in that Tennessee game is going to determine what the national media outlook is on him. If he plays really well, he'll get some Heisman dark horse talk. Look at that Tennessee defense he beat. If he plays bad, it's put another sign on Tennessee's defense that they still haven't faced a real quarterback yet. It'll be one of those two things. Tennessee defense, I don't think will get credit for anything they do. I would prefer though to beat another bad quarterback if we have to. That's how I'd prefer that story to play out. And I think that's the big. It's obviously huge that Tennessee's defensive line is not just physical, but also they're incredibly athletic. It's limited what guys have been able to do. I flash back to Amari Thomas chasing Grayson McCall out in the flat and running him down. You got your second biggest defensive tackle doing that. I feel good about really any quarterback. But then I think when you look at the secondary, the biggest thing that stood out to me in the first few weeks when you're going, still haven't really seen, we don't know what we have. It's hard to really judge them. It was, but I would always go back to, but they're much more physical. They look faster than we've been. And I think that's really the big thing that has remained true is that they're good in space. They're fast and physical, and they've been good in pass defense, but we also haven't seen they haven't had to make a ton of plays, but when they've been called upon, you mentioned Will Brooks pick 6. I think he has a second one, if not for Jamal McCoy stealing that one pick from him, but we'll let that one slide, I guess. So yeah, I think they've been played well when called upon, just hadn't been called upon too much.
And it's interesting because, the line's got up so high now, more than a 2-touchdown favorite for Tennessee, that we keep waiting. Like, we're now over, like, we'll be 5 games into the season, nearly halfway through, and there might still not be a point that Tennessee secondary is really challenged all that much until Bama. Tennessee could be 6-0. Like, we don't want to get ahead of our skis here too much, but I think Florida at night, I feel pretty good about that game next week and Tennessee's first big key SEC home game there. But this game, we keep, like, you put in my notes and I'm watching stuff and I'm like, is this where we see if this Tennessee secondary can hold up? Is this where we see Tennessee's receivers pop? Is this where we see if Tennessee's corners are that much improved from what we saw the first 3 years in Niblick? I don't know if we see that. Like, if you watch the Texas A&M Arkansas game last weekend, and I was dialed in, I don't know how much y'all were able to watch of that one. Marcel Reed had a good day against this Arkansas defense, but you look at Taylor Green and company, it was a pretty low-scoring, physical, kind of close, but it never really felt in doubt to me that Texas A&M was going to win that game. They dominated that history in the 21st century between the two of them, and it was just Texas A&M beat on them, and I think that's just a rough back-to-back if you're Arkansas and Taylor Green and Jaquindon Jackson, is that you just play with Nick Scorton and that Texas A&M front 7 that's still one of the best in the SEC. You don't get a bye. Like, Tennessee just had to get healthy. You now are going to go play maybe the most physical front 7 in the SEC in back-to-back weeks. And Taylor Green's a skinny guy. I think he bounces around, and I think he's going to be more tricky for Tennessee's front 7 to deal with than anyone they face at this point. But I don't know. I think I don't know if you've seen this a little bit, Joey, but they look at what Hawkins did in the second half against Tennessee, especially in the fourth quarter where they finally get the first touchdown on Tennessee this season. They'll be like, oh, Tennessee kind of had some struggles with a dude who's doing something with nothing, kind of like the Emory Jones, Matt Corral stuff from years ago. But I think it was just more they prepped for Jackson Arnold. Like, they didn't game plan for Michael Hawkins Jr. I think people are a little bit too nervous about how Taylor Green is going to handle this Tennessee front, because I think Tennessee's had 2 weeks to really get a good handle on him, and I'm sure Tim Banks and company watched a lot of that film against A&M, and they're like, well, we have a better front 7 than A&M. I think we're going to be able to keep this offense in check, right?
Yeah, 100%. Looking back at the Oklahoma game, I think you're right. I don't think it was a matter of they weren't prepared to be able to handle that like they would Taylor Green, especially off of bye week, like you said, where you've got, an extra week to look at film, especially last week's game. So, we know that Tennessee's got the suitable defense to be able to go size up against Taylor Green and be able to at least adjust and stop that. And so I think it'd be a little premature to look at the last 20 minutes or so of that Oklahoma game and say, oh, there's a couple spots where we could take advantage of. And that might be okay. But to think that Tennessee would not fill in those gaps according to what Taylor Green and Arkansas might be able to do would just pretty much be silly and foolish, because I think it's just closed-minded. You have to assume that, the strong Tennessee defense would 100% be prepared, knowing what they're going in for, unless obviously something else happens.
Caleb, more important question. Vols wide receivers have a big day, or running backs have a big day against Arkansas for Tennessee to win?
Yeah, I think that's probably the tipping point in this game, right? If the Vols wide receivers have a big day, you're talking about Tennessee potentially winning by 3-4 touchdowns, because the explosive plays are really hitting. Not that the explosive plays won't hit in the run game, at least once or twice. You've already seen them against some good D lines there with Deshaun Bishop and of course Dylan Sampson, but they haven't necessarily always resulted in touchdowns. So it's hard to really build this massive lead with that. Looking at everything that Arkansas does well, and I've talked about this, I think when I look at Arkansas, I think they're a decent football team. They're a good football team. But when you identify their strengths and then identify their weaknesses, I feel like those are the things Tennessee, like their strengths, Tennessee does well. Their weaknesses, Tennessee does really well, and they're going to be able to attack those. I think the secondary is shaky. I think they're potentially going to struggle. Then you look at the defensive line; they're good, but they're not rolling 5-6 deep like Oklahoma with guys that can blitz off the edge and their safeties and linebackers that are just good linebackers. They don't carry the threat that Oklahoma did. I think this could go either way. I don't know who it is. I have to lean running backs only because they've shown it to me. I'm going to lean that Dylan Sampson and Deshaun Bishop keep up what they've been doing. I mean, Dylan Sampson could absolutely, any game, if he has a big game anywhere, he's going to catapult himself into the Heisman talk, and he absolutely should. And I think it's a matter of when, not if, for that to happen. He's rushed. I guess he's not averaging quite 100 anymore. Is he still averaging 100 yards a game?
It's a good question. He probably not after 2 weeks ago, right?
What did he end up at? 92? So he might be.
Maybe.
But he's played 11 of, I think, the 16 quarters available. And so it's not like he's had just a ton of time and a ton of carries. And he's still producing what he's produced. So I'm gonna lean running backs, and I think Tennessee, they're gonna look to expand on the passing game. But
yeah, he's over 100 a game.
I was about to say, surely that 92 shouldn't have hurt it too much.
And it was one drive. I mean, that one 48 yards on the drive kept him there. Like that was it. It was a great drive by Dylan, but like that drive did a lot for him.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think Tennessee would be stupid if Joey Halsley and Josh Heupel go in there and they're like, we want to impose our will in the passing game instead of just doing what's gotten you to this point, would be insane. I think they'll try to hit on the big throws. They still tried a handful of times in the second half against Oklahoma, even when they had taken the foot off the gas. They still said, well, we can take a shot here. Let's do it. So I think they take shots and try to hit the downfield ball. And then I think if they see Dante Thornton in one-on-one situations, they're going to throw it to him again. Same with Brew McCoy. But kind of prove it to me, I think, for the wide receivers. I'm going to go with the tried and true and stick with the running back room here.
I look at the receivers, Joe, and like Kelsey Pope was talking about it today in their presser. Mike Matthews, I wonder, because you saw Ryan Williams be such a crucial piece to Alabama ultimately beating Georgia and upsetting him at home in Tuscaloosa. You see Jeremiah Smith is a true freshman at Ohio State, and he pulls off another just bonkers catch in their game on Saturday night. The fact that he's talking about like they're going to need, like his quote is something, I kind of want to pull it up, like his exact quote. To me, I read that as because he missed the first couple weeks due to injury, he was kind of behind. I think Mike Matthews would have played right away. Like everything I've heard and seen here seems like Mike Matthews is going to be a bigger factor than I think some people might have anticipated previously. Like he obviously showed well in the spring game, but here's his quote from Pope this morning. Quote, "I'm impressed by his maturity. He's a guy going down the stretch. He's going to make plays for us because we need him to make plays for us." That's some high praise on your true freshman receiver, and saying that like we need him to make plays for us. And also like there's an expectation because he is that talented that I wonder where it is, because I think a lot of people naturally assume slot because Squirrel White has not been that he has not had the kind of start to the season that he probably thought and Vol fans thought he was going to have based on the last 2 years for Squirrel. But I think it might be out wide. I think it might be in the Brazel spot, because Brazel to this point really hasn't. It's kind of like the Thornton thing from last year, where I think it's just hard for some of these guys, these transfers. You just don't know, and it might take a little bit longer than we think, because Dante Thornton's a totally different player out wide this year than he was last year. And if that's the case, I wonder if it's actually outside is where we see Mike Matthews maybe starting on Saturday. And I think the snap count might be a little bit higher than people might anticipate based on these comments. What do you think, Joey?
I think it's an interesting quote to say it like we need him, but I mean, obviously you need every receiver to step up and fill in their role. But yeah, I mean, I think Mike Matthews, what was it, second half, was it the third quarter of the Chattanooga game that he got his first touchdown?
And I mean, his touchdown catch of the year. Like it was a Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith type catch where you're like, he's different.
Ended up in the air and just kind of ate it and worked through it. So I mean, I think Kelsey Pope, seeing the potential that he has, knows that he does need to fill the role, because like right now we're like, well, there's a lot of depth, like Brew and Deontay are kind of taking the brunt of things, as Squirrel and Chris Brazel have kind of maybe not fully settled into what we expected them to this season. But I think Kelsey Pope sees his full potential and says like, all right, well, I know what he's got, so we need him to be able to bring that, to be able to kind of start really filling in this wide receiver depth, and hopefully become this insanely dual threat team. Because again, we've been so run heavy because we haven't had to really resort on any deep balls or really a lot in the air. But I think he really sees the potential to be able to utilize him and just be menaces both on the ground and in the air.
I also think Cam Seldon's going to be more of a factor. Did y'all see in the depth chart, like it's not an or at 2, running back 2 this week. It's Cam Seldon, then Deshaun Bishop. I think Cam is going to be more of a factor too, is something I'm pinpointing. And I wonder too in pass blocking. Like so much of this is like, because Tennessee is also deep at running back, we saw 2 weeks ago how much that drastically changed the game plan with not being able to protect Nico to take those downfield shots. Are we going to see some stuff like we saw in 2022 at LSU, where Dylan Sampson didn't pick up a key block and Hendon got blasted, and that was the last time we saw Sampson in that game? Do we have that kind of reaction here where it's like, we're healthy now at running back again? Peyton Lewis is good. Cam Seldon should be good. You have Deshaun Bishop and Dylan Sampson. You have Khalifa Keith too. Like, do we have more of a rotation there where it's like, look, we've got to pass. We're like, this is a better offense. Because the other thing too, Caleb, that people forget about, I think, and may have overlooked about the Oklahoma game, is Tennessee got very lucky in a lot of spots with some key turnovers, with those fumbles not coming back to haunt them. Like the odds of immediate turnover right back to you happening again 2 weeks later on the road again, like that's pretty fortunate. Like USC had an unbelievable turnover margin a couple of years ago, but that's pretty rare when you're that far out in front and you have that kind of turnover luck,
especially on the road. I mean, that's
especially on the road,
even crazier.
And I just think that game would have been a little bit different. I understand Tennessee took their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, and they could, but like those turnovers could have been significantly worse for Tennessee. And if you can't pass protect like you struggled in Norman, I don't know. I think the running back pass blocking is going to be pretty key to me, and something I'm going to be dialed in on is just who do they trust and who steps up with these 2 weeks to be like, all right, we've got to protect Nico. We've got to make sure that has to get better, because I think pass blocking has been one of the big surprises to me through 4 weeks. Is the pass blocking is not where it needs to be. If you want to make a deep playoff run, this pass blocking has to get a lot better.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no denying that. Did you say so? Cam Seldon's at the 2 or the 3 without the
2?
See, I don't get that. Deshaun Bishop has more than earned to be the number 2 back, and not just in the run game. He is the better pass blocker between him and Dylan Sampson. I'm not willing to say he's better than Cam Seldon. Cam Seldon's just a big physical body. So I'm not going to for sure say that, but he's graded out incredibly high as a pass blocker. He wasn't in those plays that Nico was strip sacked. He might have been in on the second one. That wasn't the running back's fault. First one was between the tackle and the running back. Neither picked up that stunt. And that was Dylan Sampson in there. So that's, I hope unless Cam Seldon's just far and away above Deshaun Bishop, I hope they don't abandon what Deshaun. The run game doesn't get going without Deshaun Bishop against Oklahoma. So I would hate to see that be a mistake this coaching staff makes. If a guy proves it to you, you don't go away from him. Another thing too, just on the turnovers, Tennessee got absolutely lucky. What a way for the game to unfold. But I do want to note that Joshua Josephs caused that fumble there on the 3-yard line, whatever that ended up being. He also caused another one early in Oklahoma's only before garbage time, only scoring drive that bounced back into Oklahoma's hands. So there's plenty of luck to go around. It wasn't just on Tennessee's side. It's just the ball bounces in funny ways, and Tennessee got the upper hand in that night. But yeah, I definitely think Tennessee is going to go. Anytime they look at that film, they're going to go, "We're blessed," but that's a maxim, right? Play for and make the breaks, and when one comes your way, score. And Tennessee did that. But yeah, this running back room, I think it's Dylan Sampson, Deshaun Bishop, and those guys got to prove themselves for me. Nothing against Cam Seldon. I'd love to see him healthy and go earn a number 2 spot. But if it's pass block, I've got Deshaun Bishop in right now, actually.
I like it. Switching gears here a little bit. Most important reason, Joey, that the Vols should win and cover against Arkansas is what?
I think you're just a more talented team. It comes down to, depth and talent and skill. I mean, I think we're just outright a more talented team. You walk into this. I mean, I know, again, being a Tennessee fan, anything's possible. And people are saying, it might be trap game and stuff. It's a night game in Arkansas. If they would have won that game last week, they would have been 4-1, possibly ranked. Like, we could have been looking at a whole different matchup here. But I think just head-to-head, track meet style, kind of how I felt a bit against Oklahoma. Is there some adjustments you need to make in the first half? Sure, probably. Maybe start out a little bit slow. You still got some big plays that, if you feel like you're ahead in the game. But I think in a 4-quarter game where we actually really need to depend on our starters to actually, again, track meet, I just think that we've got the edge, and it can turn into a 3-score game with 6 minutes left easily.
What about you, Caleb?
A couple things, but I think the biggest one is defense. If this defense is what they've been the last 4 weeks, it's going to be tough for Arkansas to even score. And I believe this offense can produce. This is one of those years that I think you have a nice balance where you're going, if your offense scores 21 points, there's going to be game, like you're going to be able to win games. There's no problem. I shouldn't say no problem, but you'll still be in it. And then you also look at the flip side of this, and then you're like, oh, well, I mean, if your offense scores 30, like you're definitely winning. No one's scoring 30 points on this defense, right? Unless maybe it's a first half Jalen Milroe that you saw the other night.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Arkansas to score. Will they move the ball? Probably. You saw Oklahoma move the ball a little bit against them. I don't see them scoring a lot. This is a game that I've got Arkansas under 2 scores. I should say under 14 points would be the better way. 2 scores maybe, and they come in the way of field goals. So you're looking at a touchdown, a field goal, maybe a couple field goals, however it shakes out. Sam Pittman does weird stuff, hard to ever judge him. He'll go for it on 4th and 20 from the opposing 25, opposing 25, let's call it that, in a tight ball game, as we saw. I think it was from Oklahoma State's 20-yard line in the 4th quarter. They went for it instead of taking the field goal to win it. What would have won them the game? He does weird stuff, so I never know how to judge it. But yeah, I see him 10, maybe they scrape and get close, maybe 13, they kick 2 field goals and a touchdown, but I don't see it being 2 touchdowns in this game.
It's just a weird, I don't love the back-to-back, like, just night games. I'm tired of the night games. I'm tired of prime time and just the opportunity of getting off to a bad start, or the crowd being into it, having a whole day to prepare. Like, I think it's going to be pretty loud. I think it's going to be pretty electric. I don't know. Like, I think Tennessee really got fortunate with some turnover luck 2 weeks ago to Norman, and I wonder how they would have responded if Oklahoma had taken advantage of some of the mistakes Tennessee made in that game. But credit to Tennessee's defense, they made plays, and that's the other part of it, is like when you look at Georgia, who is right there with Tennessee in terms of their ability to just not allow any touchdowns for the same amount of time that Tennessee has had. The difference is like when you saw them get in that hole to Arkansas or to Alabama on Saturday, it was Jalen Milroy is the Heisman favorite right now. Like Taylor Green's not the Heisman favorite coming into here. So like when you start to worry, you're like, oh, could that happen to Tennessee here? Could they go into Arkansas and dig themselves a hole here? Just being on the road, getting a little too antsy, looking ahead to Florida, Bama, and everything else at home. I just don't think, to y'all's point, they're good enough. Like that's my gut is I just don't think Arkansas has the horses, especially out wide, to really scare this Tennessee team. And what Arkansas does best, I think Tennessee does best defensively. And I think their front seven is not going to allow Jaquindon Jackson and Taylor Green to beat them running the football. Like if Taylor Green and Arkansas want a chance to win this game or even cover, I think they're going to have to attack this unproven secondary outside of Jermod McCoy. I think they're going to have to, but they're also going to be Addison Nichols, and this offensive line is going to have to be able to protect for 3 to 4 seconds for them to take those shots downfield. And I don't know if this offensive line at Arkansas can hold up with Pierce and Josephs and Simmons and Omar and everybody and Omari and just the constant flux of dudes that are going to be in Taylor Green's face. I don't think they have the horses. Like part of what Georgia ran into is maybe the best team in the country right now, and surprised him with the Heisman favorite. I don't think that's going to happen. And Tennessee also has the bye week where Heupel's only lost one game coming out of a bye, and it was when he was at UCF in 2020 against Memphis. So I have a hard time believing this team is going to come prepared and ready to go, locked in Fayetteville.
Right. And I think being a third of the way this season, it does, present some interesting let's find outs. And you mentioned you're looking at that secondary. I talked about leading up. The most important player in this Tennessee defense going into the season was the guy opposite James Pierce Jr. And that being Tyree West, Joshua Josephs, whoever's in there has proven to be more than up to the task of taking advantage of one-on-one situations where there's shade going the opposite direction. Can you go and make a play? And they have. And now I think we're at a point where it's, okay, you have Jermod McCoy. He's not going to get the ball thrown at him a whole lot. And it's the guy that's opposite of him is going to have to step up and make plays. And another thing about the secondary, and maybe someone can point out to me plays I've missed, but if Arkansas is able to score points more than I think they will, it's going to happen on big explosive touchdown plays, probably in the pass game. I don't see a running back breaking off 50 against this team, just ever. But this secondary hasn't just had a missed coverage play. They haven't let people in behind them. They've been really Will Brooks. I give him a hard time, but the dude seems to be where he's supposed to be at all times. He's in the area to make plays. They seem to know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. And I think kind of the thing that's frustrated me the past few years about Tim Banks is going to be the thing that pays off for this secondary. They just keep the ball in front of them. They don't let many guys in behind. If you look at Arkansas, they don't score 17 against A&M if they don't have Isaac Tesla just running open in the first drive. I mean, no one around him. And I think that it presents more opportunities for that when you have a quarterback that'll just run around. But again, that's not anything new for the secondary of this defense. So I just looking at this Arkansas team, I think they're going to have to be really, really effective in the run game. And that doesn't necessarily equal tons of points. And so I don't know how it comes about for them.
I don't either. Most important reason Arkansas will be more challenging for UT than OU is what, Caleb?
I think this offense is a little bit better than what you saw at Oklahoma. They certainly have more of an identity, right? I mean, they know who their quarterback is. They have a run game. Now Jaquindon Jackson did struggle against A&M. I think just 30 yards rushing as a team. Did they end up eclipsing 100? Right at 100 yards rushing as a team. And so I think that kind of bodes well for Tennessee. But I think you also look at the opposite side of the ball, and the defense isn't as stout as Oklahoma's. I don't know if Arkansas carries much more weight than Oklahoma. I think when you look at this, you're kind of playing a similar team. They balance out differently. I think they're a good team. I think there's a way Arkansas can win. I don't see it being an A to B path. You're probably talking about they have to hit a lot of points along the way to do so. But I think I don't know what their FPI is. I don't know if they played on a neutral field who would be favored right now. With that defense, I'd probably take Oklahoma. So I don't know really what more Arkansas can do. Now, if we see Jaquindon Jackson of the previous 4 weeks, we'll talk. But again, going back into this Tennessee defensive line, man, it doesn't get any easier this week for them.
I mean, Arkansas right now, I was looking at their FPI right now from ESPN, and they're right there with Auburn, Florida, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. 5.9 to 6.1 projected win-loss right now. Their FPI is at 8.5. For reference, Tennessee is at 23.6. But the team right below Tennessee, Ole Miss, dropped a game they very much should have won at home against a Kentucky team that I think Tennessee, like, I would go ahead and lock in next month. Like, Tennessee, like, there are not many games that I feel so confident that I'm like, let's go ahead and lock in whatever the over is than Tennessee covering. Tennessee at night in the dark mode jerseys against this Kentucky offense, I'm going to go ahead and lock in. Tennessee wins by multiple scores.
I mean, I'm with you in the factor of Tennessee. I think the interesting thing, and we talked about this last night actually too, the interesting thing that people won't say about Kentucky is they're always really good in the trenches. And I don't know what Ole Miss has on the offensive line. I know their defensive line isn't as stout as Tennessee's. Tennessee, Josh Heupel has gone in and said that 2022 game against Georgia, we don't want to ever happen again. I mean, if you watched the line of scrimmage in that game alone, you knew the outcome. And they didn't want to see that occur ever again. And they're farther away from that on the offensive line they want to be, but the defensive line, they're probably light years ahead than where they thought they would be right now. And it's a mean and nasty defensive line and physical front. And so I think they dominate Kentucky there. But Kentucky also, that's their identity. And I think it allows them to stay in games. I think you look at the Georgia game, and Georgia has, I don't know what happened in the second half against Alabama. They just let Carson Beck sit back there and do whatever he wanted, which is very different than their first half approach. But they just don't have the weapons on the outside or a guy to get it there like they have previously. And so I think when you're like, oh, well, line of scrimmage, well, Kentucky can battle with Georgia for some time. It's the horses on the outside that'll dominate typically Georgia versus Kentucky. I think Tennessee has those horses. I think they beat them on the line of scrimmage, but I also think they have the horses on the outside to run away.
Yeah. Joe, if Vols end up losing this game, an upset for the first time this season, the most important reason why, putting on your clairvoyant hat here, the most important reason as to why that happens will be what on Sunday?
Maybe Jaquinton Jackson gets the best of the defense. Like, the only way I can see that happening is they're able to just get chunk plays on the ground that we haven't seen yet this season. And like Caleb said, I don't see that happening. Again, we're in a hypothetical world where they do get upset, so I guess it did happen. So but that's probably where I see that happen the most is an inability to stop the run game and maybe not put as much pressure on offense as we thought. So a weird combination of not as consistent and converting on offense, especially on those third downs, and allowing them up some chunk plays. So definitely the home environment getting to Tennessee, the offense having to be tampered, maybe scoring 21 to 24, and Arkansas somehow, finding an extra touchdown or two on the ground.
I like that. I think, to me, that's one avenue. The other one that I come back to, and I kind of touch on a little bit, is I think Tennessee lost the turnover margin significantly. I think Tennessee, maybe Lance Hurd doesn't play in this one. Campbell doesn't play a significant portion of this game. And Tennessee's turnovers they had, let's say they get 3 turnovers. And Tennessee's defense isn't exactly known for forcing turnovers. Like, they're stout and they're elite in a lot of ways. Forcing turnovers is not the bread and butter of Tim Banks' defense. It's sacks, pressure, giving up some yards, and then they just tighten up more and more the closer you get into Tennessee territory. But
I think field position matters though in those turnovers too.
Sure.
If Arkansas is getting it in their own territory on those, I think that you could look at that and go, Tennessee lost that turnover margin bad, and it didn't matter because they can't march 70 yards each drive. So I think that matters. But yeah, I agree. That's probably Arkansas's path. Yeah. Sure.
Right? Like, Nico's got 4 turnovers in 2 key games thus far because he's still growing. It's his 5th start. He's started 5 games to be his 6th start. Like, he's still learning. Like, Nico is still getting more and more comfortable being the Vols quarterback and winning on the road and playing mistake-free football on the road is hard. And some of those were his fault. Some of them were not. But I mean, that's to me, Caleb, is how if they do lose this game, it's a house of horrors where Tennessee just had horrific turnover luck. and didn't force turnovers to get back in the game when the mistakes happened on offense. I think that's the only path for Arkansas to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see Tennessee's run game having trouble get going like it did, which opens up the passing game. So yeah, I
Squirrel fielding punts like he did on Saturday. Let's not do that anymore. Like that's something we can't have happen here.
Yeah. What happened in the good old days? I know I didn't return many punts in my playing days, but I remember always hearing like you put your heels on the 10 or whatever you all decide, and you don't move from that. And we've got
Falcons scored off that. I don't know if y'all watched the Falcons Saints game, but the Saints fielded a punt inside the 5. He fumbles it, bobbles it. Falcons jump on it.
It's probably running backwards too. I don't know why that's a thing now.
What are we doing? Like, no, like you heels in the 10, just don't go. What are you doing? Like, don't touch it anywhere. But like that scared the crap out of me 2 weeks ago. That was another one where I was like, oh, what are we doing? What's happening back there?
Need to maybe go to like a kicking camp and understand how hard it is to get that ball to flip backwards. I know a lot of college punters and a lot of NFL punters make it look really easy, but 9 times out of 10, that ball's bouncing the end zone. Let's take our chance. I like those odds. I'm rolling the dice on that one. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, I love that. Final one here. Most important storyline coming out of this game, in your estimation, we're fast forwarding to Sunday here. What do you think the most important national storyline coming out, or even local storyline for this Tennessee team after the game against Arkansas?
I'll go first, I guess. National, I think it will be about Nico in one way or the other. I think the national media is ready to kind of start planting their flag on Nico. I think he's played good enough that they haven't been able to say one way or the other. But he also hadn't played quite good enough for them to have to say he's him yet. So I think that's all eyes there. And then of course I think the defensive line will they'll get their flowers again. Local media line, at least what I'm really looking for, you said, is it a big day for the wide receivers? I don't necessarily need a big day from the wide receivers, but I need a better day than we've seen so far. If we don't, the panic button, I'm not hitting it yet, but it's in a drawer right now. The wide receiver panic button's in a drawer, and I'm putting it out on the desk just in case.
I love it. What about you, Joe?
I'll play devil's advocate and be a little pessimistic here. I think Caleb's been on it for a while. I think the national media just is still okay. Well, Tennessee's a good team, but it's going to look like assuming we beat this team by 2 or 3 scores. All right, well, they still haven't seen a team that really can test them yet. This team still is got a lot of, valuables that we don't know what it looks like yet. And I think it's going to just kind of be until, because Florida just looks awful too. I think not looking forward too far ahead, but I think it's going to take a team like Bama, who's obviously playing insane right now, to actually get some respect on that level. I mean, obviously we're ranked number 4. They're giving us plenty of baseline respect, but I still think a lot of people just won't be able to fully say, okay, this Tennessee team really are national championship contenders, deep playoff run, locked in, cemented, like top 4 seeds, stuff like that. So pending Tennessee plays well, which is ideally how it goes, I think that's kind of just the underlying, media perspective coming out of it, unfortunately.
It's interesting because like Nico's Heisman odds still, I think he's 4th right now going into this weekend, and he just hasn't like that. I think it's twofold, and I go back and forth on this. Is like I think it's too high based on what we've seen from Nico. I think that's more of a projection by the bettors, is that like they're projecting him to get to a certain point that he's just not at yet. But I also just think he's not been better than what we saw from Hendon Hooker in 2022. Nor should he. He's significantly younger. But I think a lot of fans were expecting like, okay, we're going to have this big jump from Joe to Nico. But it's like, it might not be till next year is when you really see Nico as like the Heisman front runner before the year and the hype really come through. I do worry about that a little bit, because I think you can see like y'all are obviously in the community and everything else where people are kind of frustrated with the downfield arsenal and not looking as much like 2022, because people will say it's fun winning with 12 personnel. And it's another thing when they're actually watching, because I want to ask them, I'm like, are you enjoying that? Are you actually like, it's good. Winning's awesome, but are you having as much fun as you did in 2022? And of course, the most important thing is just winning. But I do think because Hype set this historic precedent in 2022 and what we've seen, the highs at highs with this offense, I don't know. I think coming out, I could see another game where Heupel is super conservative because he's trying to escape with another road victory. My gut is like that's what the talking point is going to be, is like this offense is still like they're okay. Like there's like Dylan Sampson and the running back. Like I think they're gonna be able to run the ball on Arkansas on Saturday, but I have my doubts that this passing game they pass protect well enough and they take those shots and the receivers get enough separation to really have like a Mizzou type of game or in 2022 or even a Florida game in 2022. Like just some big key downfield shots. I don't know if I necessarily see that happening this week. So I think that is my guess coming out of this weekend is that Tennessee wins again, but it's probably ugly. It's probably not as fun as Tennessee fans are hoping it will be going into Arkansas. But I could absolutely see like 31-13 and Tennessee does just enough. Maybe Nico throws a pick. Maybe he coughs some fumble up or something. But he's still great. Still like a solid B+, A- road start. But it doesn't feel like a Heisman type guy. And you're like, why is he still fourth in Heisman odds when he's good, but he's not like. It's just different. Like he'll get there, and I think he'll get there, but I don't think that's where he's at. So it's just kind of weird. It's this weird thing where people are projecting Nico as a Heisman finalist for New York in December, and I don't know. We haven't seen it, and I'm not necessarily certain we're going to see it based on the circumstances with Tennessee this year.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you said that about like Nico. Kind of will he arrive this year? How will that all shake out? Maybe it's next year. And I mentioned this. I think it was the first episode we did with you. How I think this might be Josh Heupel's 2022 baseball team, where it's like maybe before the year we weren't expecting this. Then you see it kind of occur and you're like, all right, they're national championship team. And we're kind of disappointed by the outcome. But you look back on that 2022 team and as good as they were, you kind of start peeking around. You're like, all right, well, I mean, we didn't have a catcher. Like, yeah, Evan Russell stepped up and he was huge for you, but he was no Cal Stark, for example. Obviously much better at the plate, but you need a guy behind the plate that's running things, that's running the show. And you saw him do it, I mean, with his arm in the World Series. You had your entire, or virtually your entire pitching staff was freshmen. Your weekend guys, you had Drew Beam on that pitching staff as a true freshman. And you kind of look around and there's a ton of talent. There's some older talent. I mean, I think you look at James Pierce Jr., Amari Thomas, Keenan Peely, for example, a guy that technically his first year playing for Tennessee. And it's like there's pieces there, but there's also some big pieces missing. And there's also some big pieces that are there that maybe they're too young. We'll see when the moment arrives. And so it just feels kind of similar in that vein of like, will they, yeah, they're good. How good are they? Are they ready for that moment? And I don't know if this team's loss comes to a Notre Dame, for example, but it just feels like maybe they fall short and it's probably above where they should, were selected to in the preseason, but short of where mid-season, everybody changes their expectations and goals, obviously, when you learn about them. So maybe they fall short of that. I don't know. And then also, I mean, kind of for Tony, looking at the coaching staff, I think you asked Tony Vitello, and he probably regrets some things specifically about that Notre Dame series and how he managed it. Is Josh Heupel, has he been able to learn enough? Is he seasoned enough? And you look at that Oklahoma game and you like to think he is. I mean, just an excellent job coaching, but also, I mean, he's pretty young in his career, right? He's got a lot to learn. We still haven't, I don't know if there's been a game that I've been like Josh Heupel, other than Oklahoma. Josh Heupel managed that game exceptionally better. Like he out-coached the crap out of that dude. I think you look at Alabama and it was weird. You kind of felt like Nick Saban might have wet his pants a little bit, but I don't know if it was head and shoulders above. I really just look at that last drive and I'm thinking, what is Nick Saban and Bill O'Brien doing? So, I mean, there's definitely been games he's out-coached them, but he's not quite been, maybe I'm forgetting one, but I don't remember thinking one of like, yeah, he just embarrassed that guy.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is just those first couple of years when they won big. And then it's like the Kentucky thing. It wasn't like when those wins. And even when you went to Lexington, it was just more of a back and forth. And it didn't feel like, I don't know. To your point, I mean, you go to Mizzou, you blow them out, you get them back here, you blow them out, and then you go to Mizzou and you get blown out. So we haven't seen as many tight, different kind of games that we've seen from Heupel like we saw against Oklahoma. Maybe that starts now. Like maybe that's just part of the natural progression is we just see more of those closely contested. Like you're getting everybody's best on Saturday because you're seeing that like, hey, Tennessee's right there in the top 4 now.
Right. And I'm not saying Tennessee's not ready for the moment. I mean, this defense wins championships. That's been a saying for a long time for a reason.
Yeah.
That like those things don't cliches don't occur because they're not true, right? And so they are positioning themselves well. I think particularly at the quarterback position, you look there and you go, man, just being a quarterback in this league as a redshirt freshman is hard. Then you're talking about trying to go win a national championship. It makes it exponentially harder. And he does have many games to figure it out. Good news is you get 2 losses get you in. By the way, I don't know what that insane article. I didn't get to fully read it.
That was not
wild. Wild. But
yeah, I think Tennessee's safe if they beat Alabama and Georgia. I think they're safe getting it.
Imagine if they split them.
Yeah. Like
all of a sudden it's a super hard discussion. Like that was
they're top 7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
100%.
But yeah, I mean, you do have a 2-game buffer. This isn't you gotta go 12-0 or bust kind of deal. So that I think that helps that situation as well. It seems like
that's
he's
why you have
already
to win this game, right? That's why it's so important because you need you want to feel good about the buffer. Is that you don't feel like you have to you go in like you're playing with house money at that point because then you should beat Florida. You should beat you have so many home games in a row, and then you get Bama at home, obviously, and at Georgia. But if you are undefeated going to this 4-game home stretch, it's just almost injuries aside, it's almost impossible to see how this team doesn't win 10 games and make the playoff. Sure. If you can close here, that's my message. I guess you can't really do this to your hype. Close here and we're in the playoff. But it just does feel like that's where you got to be.
But we've said it on our show. It really did feel like similar to what you're saying about Arkansas. I feel like Oklahoma's that point where it's like, hey, we beat Oklahoma. Now we don't have to play the math of, okay, we have to win here, and then we need that team to lose there. Now it's just go win week by week. You don't even think about Alabama. We don't have to. We don't have to worry about beating that team. Yeah. Josh Heupel doesn't have to go back and start studying Alabama film because you got to figure out unique ways to attack them. You don't have to wait. You can wait till that week to start preparing for Alabama. And game by game, you've got to win 10 games. Tennessee will be favored in every single game going forward, except for the one in Athens. Yeah. Maybe the one in Neyland against Alabama. They'll be favored in every game, and they have the opportunity to win it. It really feels like you get to just take it week by week at this point, and I think that's all you can ask for at this. Where Tennessee's at is wanting to take it week by week. Yeah, just win the game in front of you, and the rest at this point, where you put yourself in a position where you've taken care of enough business that if you just do the task in front of you, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. And it's kind of wild. Bama after that, I think Bama's now with that win, they're going to be favored. They go to Vanderbilt, and then they get South Carolina at home.
It'll take some 2
they're 1.5
big
point
wins.
Now, but it'll move with 2 weeks. Well, at least 2 more weeks to go with both lines.
Yeah,
I think Tennessee will have to cover this week and probably the following week to be a true favorite. It may end up a pick'em game, but I think they'll have to cover the next 2 weeks for Vegas to move that line. Unless the money rolls in that week, they could end up technically favored in that.
Yeah. But
I think the Vegas line, they'll always be.
What were they down? What was it, 7.5 2 years ago? What was it?
It jumped to 9.5 when Bryce Young got announced as a starter.
Okay.
Now that was probably more money going towards Bama than the true Vegas line. But yeah, Bryce Young got announced as a starter, I think at 8 a.m. when Nick Saban was on game day, and it jumped to 9.5. I forgot
about that. Cause was it his shoulder that he was dealing with?
I believe so. Jalen Milroe actually played that A&M game they almost lost.
That's crazy. That feels like a lifetime ago.
Truly.
Goodness gracious. Caleb, Joe, what can the good folks check out from you and the awesome team over there at More Important Issues, Fox Sports Radio, Fan Run Radio, everything else? Y'all are all over the place. You got that? You're just talking Vols all the time.
Yeah. It's been a busy time, but we enjoy it because it's a good busy time. A lot of football happening right now, obviously. I know we'll be on the radio Thursday night. As far as we have the live show this week, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, don't know yet. Sorry about that. Wish I could be better prepared. You'll probably know by the time the show comes out. But yeah, you can always follow us on Twitter. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. You can find us at More Important Issues. More_issues is our account on Twitter. You can find us there and keep up to date. But yeah, we'll be back. I guess we got to figure out something. We're traveling Sunday, so that's the hitch in the plan. I'd love to talk about this game on Sunday. I don't want to wait till Monday. I have a feeling it'll be good. If it's bad, I might just stay in Fayetteville forever. I'll go to Hot Springs. They have a casino there. I'll go to Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Joe's on break. Who knows where he ends up? Who knows?
I might be in for a couple days. You say casino. I got a couple free days. I might.
There's a horse track there too.
There we go.
Horse track. There you go.
Yeah.
Love it. Joe,
appreciate you having us on, man.
Oh, yeah. It's always a blast. Joe, Caleb, thank you guys so much. You guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to y'all very soon.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.